Hello everyone, and welcome to this stream. I generally stream about Rust on this channel, but today I want to try something a little bit different. I have been playing a little bit with Solid.js, and I love JavaScript. If you know me, you know that I love JavaScript and Node.js. So let's do some JavaScript and let's do some Solid.js. And what I actually want to try to do is I've seen recently a very cool project called Advent of Vue, which is something that is going to be starting soon in a couple of days, starting from December 1st. And actually, let me share my screen because you can actually check out Advent of Vue. I'm going to give you the link, put it here in the chat. And the idea of this particular project is something similar to Advent of Code, but with the difference that rather than just doing kind of algorithmic coding challenges, you can basically do kind of front-end oriented challenges. And the idea is that basically there is a specific problem every day, like try to build this particular UI with some interaction, and you can build it in this case with Vue.js, but I'm just taking the idea, ripping it off and implementing it in Solid.js instead. So I don't know if you are a fan of Solid.js. For me, it's just another way to build something more or less realistic, I guess, with Solid.js. Because right now I've only done the tutorial on the website, which is very bespoke, just to learn very specific concept. I haven't built anything that is somewhat more realistic. And okay, let's get into it. I have about 1 hour for today, so it's not really a lot of time. Let's try to make the best use of it. So I have created already a solution in this repository that you can see here. Again, let me post this in the chat as well, but I'm going to be trying to recreate it from scratch today. So we'll see all that process. So what's the idea? If you don't know the Tic Tac Toe game, you probably know it, I'm quite sure of it, but let's just recap the rules. So we need to display a grid where we have a 3x3 grid, and it's a game that you play 2 people and they take turns. So the first turn in this case is this O, or this circle player, and basically they can pick any of the cells and they will put a circle in that particular cell. So and the players play in turn, so the next turn we have an X, then we have a circle again, and the idea is that the player that manages to have three placeholders in a row, either horizontal, vertical, or diagonal, wins the game. And if that doesn't happen and all the cells are filled, it's a draw, and you can restart another game. So basically what we need to implement is this kind of UI. We need to make it reactive. We need to alternate the players, and when a player is clicking, of course the player can only click cells that are free, and then that cell will become that particular placeholder. Okay, we already have a question in the chat. Do you know how challenging with those advent tasks will be? I actually don't know. I expect they will be somewhat similar to this one. This is actually day 0, so something that they published as, let's say, as a kind of a spoiler to give a feeling of what the other challenges will be like. So I think this is going to be pretty indicative for the level of complexity that you are going to be finding. I expect they will also be somewhat practical, maybe building components like, I don't know, a slideshow, accordion, or maybe a prototype of an email client. This is kind of my expectation. I'm making a big guess there, but definitely follow that adventofvue.com, sign up for the newsletter, and every day you'll be getting a challenge. With that particular setup, you also get a link to a Stack Blitz, I think it is. So one of those web environments where you will get some scaffolding already in place, so you can get started quickly. You don't have to do everything from scratch, basically. So that's it. But in this case with Solid.js, we want to do stuff mostly from scratch. I actually created Solid.js starter template. I'm gonna give you the link of that as well. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Somebody's saying that they really like... Sorry, I cannot read the name because I made this window very small. So this is Ted Arnav. Thank you, Ted Arnav. Is saying that he really likes the stream setup. So this glass pane. I might be sharing that as well. This is actually very experimental. It's the first time I'm using it. So I'm glad that you really like it. Okay, so I actually, speaking of experimental stream, I was supposed to have the ability to display chat messages on the stream, but that for some reason is not working. So apologies about that. Believe me, that should work. But yeah, for some reason it's not working. Anyway, so I'm gonna be reading the questions. Feel free to ask questions. I'm gonna be reading them and I'll try to answer anyway. So how do we use this particular starter? Actually, if we go again to the browser, I'm gonna go to that link that I just shared with you. And basically it's a very simple, you can either use it as a template here, so you can create your own repository starting from this template. You can even do it in a code space, or you can just follow the instructions here. There is actually a project that I really like called dgit or dgit, I don't know how to read it, where you can basically give it a username and a repository name, the name of your project, and what it does is basically gonna clone the repository and remove the Git files. So later on you can decide whether you want to host it as a Git project, but basically you are just getting the plain files. Okay, so let's use this. We run this command and we call it date 0. I'm doing this on my desktop, so basically I'm going to be having a folder on my desktop called date 0, which basically contains a copy of that particular repository. So if we go here on date 0, let me make this a little bit bigger. We can do an ls and we can see that we have a bunch of files. So there is a tsconfig, there is a vit configuration, source, we can see what we have in source. I have a bunch of files. So basically this is just giving me a starting point for a Solid.js project. Now we can do npm install. Let's see how fast it is. It is actually quite fast. And then we can do npm, I guess, run dev, if my memory serves me well, and we should get something running locally. So I can now start this one, and we have a kind of a standard Solid.js starting application. So now we can use this and start to build our particular project. Okay, so let's open Visual Studio Code. Let me put it on screen. All right, so let's get started. I'm gonna do a little bit of cleanup because we definitely don't need the logo. So let's clean up. I guess I'm gonna keep the CSS. Actually, no, let's even remove the CSS. We're gonna be doing everything as a component. And perfect, index.tsx, we need to remove this CSS because we are not using it, and in app.tsx we are definitely not using the logo. Now, why is it complaining? Strict null checks. It doesn't like my tsconfig somehow. Okay, let's rename this to Tic Tac Toe. And right now the only thing we want to do is just saying hello world. Let's make it an h1. And we are not gonna use this class for now. We are not gonna use this style for now. And here what we want to do is import Tic Tac Toe, and this is what we want to render as the main element. So if we did everything correctly, let's see, it's not, is it complaining here? Doesn't seem to be complaining. Let's go to the browser, we see hello world. Okay, that's kind of neat. Now let's start to do something a little bit more useful. Let's start to think about our game logic. I'm very disappointed about this thing that complains. Let's see. Oh, we also have a question. So about that stream setup, if you mirror your webcam horizontally, you should look in the direction of things on the stream view. That's a good point. I guess I'm gonna try to follow that advice. I also have another version like this, which may be a little bit better. I don't know. You can tell me which one you prefer, but if this one becomes too annoying, I can switch to this other one where I'm kind of looking on the side, maybe not really, but whatever. Yeah, I'm still a very noob streamer, so excuse me if things are not super polished. Okay, so let's get into ESLint and see if we can fix this one. TypeScript ESLint strict Boolean expression. This requires the strict null checks compiler option to be turned on. I suppose because here we have strict to false. Is that gonna fix it? Let's see. Also another thing you should know, I'm not the most proficient with TypeScript, so this is also me forcing myself to use more TypeScript so I can learn more about it. And I didn't have this issue a few days ago when I tried this template, so I'm a bit surprised that this is happening. Let me try to restart Visual Studio Code. And let's see if this makes it better. Okay, it's not complaining anymore. Let's see if we're going to be having other problems because of that strict true. Okay, so what do we want to do? Basically, the first thing we want to do is to render the grid, right? So how do we render the grid? We can do in a very dummy way, which is probably what I'm going to be doing first. So let's just create a fragment, and on this fragment what I want to do is let's try to imagine how do we want to display our grid. For now, let's just do a div, and then what we want to do is to have 9 cells. So in reality I wish I had used emmet, so this could have been simpler. So 8 and 9. Okay, now actually let's do them 0 based. So I'm gonna be doing 0 here and remove the 9. So we have 9 cells, and if we just switch back to our browser, this is gonna be absolutely meaningless. Like it's just numbers in a column, right? So not really what we want. And let's start to add some CSS to actually make it look a little bit like the actual Tic Tac Toe grid. So here we have a bunch of stuff. I'm gonna actually remove everything. And what we want to do is to create class. And this class we can use our style. So let's import style from actually still called app module. Let's call Tic Tac Toe module. Thank you, Copilot, which makes more sense. And here we want to call it style.grid. Now we don't have this style yet, so let's create it. What is going to be? Actually, let's see if this is a good suggestion from Copilot. So it's saying it is a grid. We will probably want to use the grid. We want 3 columns and 3 rows. Grid gap, probably we don't want it. Width and height, probably we don't want it. Okay, let's start with this and let's see how it looks like. I'm also gonna add a border, let's say 3 pixel solid, just to see something. And then let's also do another thing, grid div, and let's just add. Okay, all of this seems like a good start. We can make it better as we go. Let's see how it looks like. Okay, this is starting to look a little bit better. We still have our hello world, so we'll need to clean it up. I'm kind of surprised we have that hello world. Did I forget it in the component? I did, so definitely my fault. Okay, so now this is looking a little bit better. Let's clean it up a little bit more. Now, I don't think we need this width and height. Okay, looks better. How do we make this a little bit smaller? Oh yeah, I actually had a lot of zoom. So let's see. Let's try to change the style a little bit. Now here I want 0. We don't want the gap. Margin 0 auto. Do we want that? I think we can just go with justify content center to center things. We can start to remove this border. Okay, looks at least centered. Now we can change the different cells. Different cells, what can we do? We can do, we don't need this background. We might want to keep the border. Actually, I'm probably gonna do 2 pixels. Here we probably want to add a width and a height. Let's do, I don't know, 200 pixel by 200 pixel for now. And font size, let's see what's reasonable. Probably 2 EM is gonna be decent. Line 8, let's see. Okay, that is starting to look a little bit better. Now, let's actually do a cell class, which basically means that here we need to do a class style.cell, and this should still look exactly as before. Now, what can we do once we have cell? We can actually make it flex, so we can easily center. So display flex, and we should be able now to easily center things by just say justify content center and align items, what it is, center as well, I think. And now we can remove this text align, which is not needed anymore. I think we can get rid of this one, and now it should look a little bit better. Perfect. We can probably bump this a little bit. Looks good. Let's see 3.5. 3.5 is good. Okay, now another thing that we can do is a little bit of a CSS trick, which I'm just gonna copy paste because it's a bunch of boilerplate. But basically what we want to do is to remove these borders here, right? Because if you remember our original idea, it's kind of open on the side. So for every cell, based on the position of that cell, we need to remove all the additional borders that we don't want to see. So one way to do that is this trick here, where we're basically saying all the top line, so the first, the second, and the third, remove, well, make transparent the border top. Then same thing on the left side. So 1, 4, and 7, make the border transparent. And similarly, we can do the same thing here. Now here the border is 2 pixels. So probably I'm just gonna make this one 1 pixel for now. Okay, let's see. This is starting to look much better. Now, of course, this is not doing anything. There is no interactivity whatsoever, right? So we need to start making this an actual interactive game. Right now, it's just displaying a grid. And where do we even start? So we can start by creating something that allows us to store some data and then have some reactivity, which in Solid.js is done with, oh, look at that. It's thinking that this is React. In Solid.js, it is somewhat similar, but it's called createSignal. So I'm gonna take this suggestion, but then I need to switch it to createSignal. And we need to decide what is the starting thing. Now, because we're using TypeScript, we can use some type definition. So what is really a grid for us in this particular game? We can define a type for it. So we can say type grid is equal to a bunch of things. For instance, here is saying string, string, string repeated 9 times, which is a decent suggestion. But maybe we want to define first what goes into every single cell. So this could be cell, 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 but what is really a cell? So let's say type cell. We can say that it's either player 1 or player O, or well, player X or player O, whatever we want to call it. So that could be one way, but I also would like to think, okay, let's define player first, right? So we can have player 1, which is X, and then player 2, which is O. Now a cell can either be player 1 or player 2, or be empty, but just to keep everything as a string and simplify my life, I'm just gonna put an empty string. Now, what is a grid at this point is a collection of cell repeated 9 times. So cell, 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 9 times. Perfect. So at this point, what we can do is say createSignal, and here we can specify that it's a type grid, and we can say something like this. Now, is this okay? It is complaining that we are not using any of this, so we need to be using it. And how do we use it? The first thing that we can do, well, first of all, we'll need to import this createSignal, so import from Solid.js, and we can start to use this with a for loop. And in Solid.js, there is actually a very interesting thing that it's a big difference from React. So in React, what you will do is create like a JSX expression, do a map in that expression over this board. In Solid.js, you actually have a for component, which is something that might look familiar if you're coming from Vue.js. And for instance, here is actually giving us a good suggestion. So for each board, oh, do you use Solid Dev Tools? I don't use it. I didn't even know that there was one. So let's see later if we really need it. But for now, I'm not going to be using it. Okay, so we have a for component. And with the for component, what we can do is basically say something like this. So you can pass as a child a closure. And this closure allows you to render for every single item in the board. So what do we want to render? Basically something like this. But this time we want to here have something else, which is basically the cell itself. So here we're gonna have, everything is gonna be empty by default. For now, let's see if what I'm saying is correct. Let's ignore this one for now. Is there a way to make it ignore this for now? Really? Let's do this. Okay. It's not refreshing for some reason. Okay, I needed to hard refresh. Let's see if there are errors. There are no errors, so this seems to be working. Let's kind of try to clarify that. So let's put a bunch of random things. Okay, this is doing what it should be doing. Now, how do we start to make it interactive? There are another couple of few things we need to do. We need to define who is playing right now, right? Because we can add a click handler here in every single cell, but then we need to know exactly who is playing that turn to decide what goes into that particular cell. So we can create another piece of state. I'm gonna call it, to use a React terminology, where in this case the state is going to be the current player. So what do we call it? Let's see. What did I call it in my original example? So what did I call it? I call it turn. So we can actually follow the same idea here. But turn is something that for now I just want to keep as an integer. For instance, we can say createSignal 0. So this is just something we can use to decide which turn is happening right now. Then we can create const players, and players is just a constant for now. And now we can create a piece of state that says function current player, and this function is literally returning players and the current turn with modulo 2. So we can, at every turn, we start from turn 0, at every turn we can keep increasing the turn, and this way we will switch between player X and player 0. Now let's see, what do? We can display here a div that tells us which player is currently playing. So we can say current player, and we can do let's see, we can do current player. I think that should work. Is that gonna be enough? I don't know why is it complaining here. Oh yeah, it's missing the return type because, yeah, TypeScript, player 1 or player 2. Now set turn, we are not using it yet, so let's remove it. And you can see that here we have current player X. Now let's make this a little bit nicer. Let's do class style status. Okay, we have another question in the chat. Isn't store a better fit for the board state? This is actually a very good question. So Solid.js, as far as I'm aware, also has another primitive called store, where basically you define kind of a global object. Maybe global is not the right terminology. It's more like, rather than implementing individual signals for everything, for every piece of state, you can put everything into one state object, and then you can use store as a way to basically every time you update that particular object or an attribute of that object, that will trigger a render and it will update all the view of your component. So that's definitely a good option. My current implementation, or at least what I have in mind, uses Signal because I haven't used store that much. Maybe if we have extra time, what we can do as an exercise in the end is to try to switch from this implementation to something using store. Okay, so here we have style.status. What do we want to do? Let's make it a little bit more visible. So we can just say here dot status, and we can say, yeah, let's give it a little bit of margin, font size 2 AM, text align center. Okay, now if we go back here, we see current player is X. Now, if we click, nothing is happening yet. We need to make it happen, something. So how do we do something a little bit more interactive? Let's basically say that every div here has an on click, and here we can specify an handler. And an handler, we can say function on cell click, I guess. And here we can just add an event. And for now, let's just do a console log of event. And on cell click is our event handler. Now it is complaining. Why it is complaining? It's missing return type. So what do? Do you just say void when you're not returning anything? An event needs to be an event. So what is a proper event? Is a mouse event, I guess. I'm not too sure that this is a mouse event in this case, but whatever. Let's go with it. Okay, here is complaining about something. That was probably while I was coding. Okay, now if we click here, it's a pointer event actually. So it's giving us something, right? Now there is a problem here that we'll need to distinguish and get the index of the one that was clicked. So how do we do that? One way could be to do something like current target, where we would get different cells. As you can see, we get a reference to the cell that was clicked, but then we will need to use this DOM element and somehow have some kind of attribute to figure out exactly which one is in the grid. So another way to do that, which actually I find it really interesting in Solid.js, is that you can add it to your own event handler. You can add arbitrary parameters. For instance, here what we would want to have is something like index, which needs to be a number. And here this we said was a pointer event. Now how do we pass an index here? So let's just say index. It's also something we want to print. And the idea is that we can do something like this. So define our event handler as an array of function and the additional parameter we want to pass into that function. And what is that we have here? We have index here, as you can see. So we just pass index. Now I'm not too sure why it doesn't like this one. It's saying that it needs to be a mouse event. Okay, so it did like mouse event. Is that better? And it needs to return current target. I love TypeScript. What are we doing wrong here? All right, so this is actually the other way around. So the index goes first and then the mouse event goes next. I think that should make it happy. Okay, this is always a little bit confusing, but yeah, that's the way it is. So let's see if that works. Let's refresh. So if we click here, is almost doing what we think should happen, but it's not really doing that, because index is actually a reactive accessor. So this is not really a number. This is we need to import the type accessor. So this is an accessor for a number. So it's basically like a getter for a number. So here we need to call index like this. If we refresh, now is it 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 6. Okay, that seems to work. I'm also gonna do something else. Do you like the callback argument syntax? Isn't it better to just pass a normal callback? Then how do we pass the index there? I'm not too sure how to do that otherwise. Because here, ideally, what I would like to do is just make sure that this index is already propagated into the function so that I can distinguish between all the different cells. So happy to accept any suggestion about that. Okay, meanwhile, let's continue. So at this point we have some information. Okay, so it's event callback index. Okay, so that doesn't seem too complicated. So you're basically saying that here we can just say, here we're going to be having the event, and we call ourselves. We could just call at this point, because we don't really use the event, right? So we could just call on-cell click, and we can actually materialize the index itself. And now index here is going to be already a number. I think that should work now. And that should be like that. Yeah, it's a good point. So in the chat we are saying that the array syntax is fine, it works, but it's not always the most intuitive. And I was confused as well, because you get the opposite order of arguments when you call compared to the actual function that you defined. So this syntax is a little bit more, I think, explicit and easier to grok. Let's make sure it works though. So now if we refresh, we get 0, we get 4, we get 8. Yeah, perfect. So this is perfectly equivalent, and I actually like it a little bit more as well. So thank you for the suggestion. Okay, so what's the next step? So the next step is that here we need to update the board. But can we actually update the board? The first thing we need to check is if the value of that particular cell is empty, then it means that it's actually a valid move. We can actually do that move. So let's do an if statement first, and let's say if board index different than that return. This is actually pretty good. Now, why you don't like it? Unnecessary return statement. Yeah, just wait a second. Then if that value is empty, which is the other case, then it means we can update the grid with the current player. So basically we need to create a new board. We need to say const new board is basically going to be the same board as before, except new board index is going to be current player. And now we can restore our set board and say set board of new board. And we also want to update the turn, so we need to restore set turn and do set turn plus 1. Now why it doesn't like this one? No overload matches this call. Argument of type cell is not assignable to parameter. Doesn't need to be a function. I'm not sure I understand this error, so let's see. So this is definitely a grid, and it's understanding that, okay, maybe we need to explicitly say that this is a grid. Okay, TypeScript, thank you. Is not that smart as you might think. Sounds good. So let's go back here and let's see if we can play a little bit. So the X was working, now is the next player playing. If we click again here, nothing happens. So here we can play. Now if we make this guy win, we don't have any winning condition, so we can literally play forever. And now we don't even have an end condition. So we need to add more logic into our game. Okay, so how do we do that? So let's try to define what are the winning positions. So let's see here, we can do const winning moves, I guess, or winning positions. And this is basically going to be an array of all the horizontal lines, all the vertical lines, and the 2 diagonal lines. So 0, 1, 2 looks legit, 3, 4, 5 looks legit, 6, 7, 8 looks legit. So these are the 3 horizontal lines. Then we have the vertical lines. So 0, 3, 6, yes. 1, 4, 7, yes. And now it should be 2, 5, 8. Yeah, thank you, Copilot. And now the diagonal ones, 0, 4, 8, and the other one should be 2, 4, 6, looks correct. Okay, so now we have these winning positions. What can we do? We can start to define other helper function. Let's say, yeah, is winner. I don't know if I like it this way. Let's just say winner. And winner can return player 1, player 2, or null. Yeah, let's do it this way for now. So basically what we want to do is for let's see, this code might be good enough. So basically what it's saying, for every winning position we always have 3 cells that we want to check. They are called A, B, C, and D. Sorry, A, B, and C. Then what we do is we check if board position A is the same as position B. Okay, this is almost correct. We also need to check that board A is different than empty, and then that the 3 of them needs to be the same, so that A, oh yeah, I was checking it here. So A is equal to B and A is equal to C, which also means that C is equal to B. Now what is going to return here? This is returning, this should return player 1 or player 2. Yeah, I don't know why it doesn't like it. Otherwise return null. Let's see why it's not liking it. Type cell is not assignable to type x0 or null. Okay, we are checking that is not an empty string. So is it safe here to just say as player? I believe it is, but are you happy with it? Okay, I suppose we didn't define a player type. We could probably define it. It's equal to either player 1 or player 2. And now, okay, this is making it appear. Okay, now we are not using this winner function yet. So let's see, how can we do it? We might have another function as well, which is function is draw, and it's a boolean. And here, let's see, if the board has every cell is different than empty and the winner is null, meaning there is no winner, this is a draw. And another function could be is complete, I guess, and this is boolean, which returns there is no winner and either no, wait, there is a winner, so winner is different than null, and otherwise is a draw. Okay, so what do we want to do here? Let's start to make this a little bit smarter. So let's change what we display here. We display actually here we need to import another component called if, and we say, so if is complete, we display the let's just do a button for now, div restart game. We will do the styling later. And then before that, what we want to do is if there is also a switch, I believe, in Solid, so it might be cool to use that. Solid.js, let's look at the documentation. Oh, sorry, there are a lot of comments that I've been ignoring. Let me discuss these comments first. So array is not a tuple, but a tuple is an array. Okay, fair enough. I'm not too sure I understand that, but cool. I suppose this is related to the reason why here we needed to put grid specifically. So something that I need to look more in detail when it comes to TypeScript. So thank you for that suggestion. The other comment is const board value equal board. Beforehand will get you better type narrowing. Functions like board don't get narrower. Okay, so you're basically saying, perfect, I think I understand your suggestion, is basically saying const, I don't know, current board is equal to board, and this is getting its own type, I hope. It's getting type grid, yeah, that's good. And now we can just do replace all the instances of board. I don't know if this is even a little bit more performant because it's using the accessor only once, but yeah, that should be equivalent. Now in terms of typing, does it give us something for free? No, we still need to say as player. Okay, so what I wanted to do is to check the switch. I remember that there is a switch component. So let's see, which we can probably use here. How does it work? We can see switch and a fallback, which is probably the default, and then match and match. Perfect. So let's copy this. So basically what we want to do here is to say we need to import the switch and the match. So if there is a winner, we want to display the winner. If it is a draw, we want to display it is a draw. Otherwise we just display the current player. So what is the fallback is current player. So basically this one. Then let's say match when is draw. We display something like it's a draw. And the other one is when winner is different than null. What we say, we can say something like winner wins. Okay, now why it doesn't like the switch statement? Do I have some? Yes, I do have some syntax error, which is here. We basically want to have, do we need to have a fragment there? Okay, you cannot just have a text node. Because, okay, fair enough. Let's see if this works as we expect. We have an error. So what is the error? Does not provide an export named if. Doesn't it? I was quite sure that there was an if. I think it's called show. Yeah, that's right. My bad. So it's show condition, and this is show when. Okay, let's see now if it's looking any better. Perfect. So current player is X. We start to play. We do a very dumb game. So X wins and restart game. Okay, so now the last thing that we need to do is to be able to restart the game. But let's try if we can make a draw. So let's see if we can make a draw. How do we make a draw? We do this, then this, then this, then this. It's a draw, restart game. So the draw condition works as well. So the last thing we need to do is restart game, which basically needs to give us a new board, a new empty board, and it needs to restart the turn from 0. So let's do a function. And this function, oh, look at that. Thank you, Copilot. Yeah, void. This function is basically exactly what we want. So it's resetting the grid to everything is empty and the turn to 0. So the only thing we need to do here is to say on click, and we can add this particular function here. Let's see if that works. So click, click, click. I'm trying to, 0 wins, restart the game, and it restarts the game. Okay, so this is pretty much it. So we have, we have some spam in the chat. So let's, I don't even know how to get rid of it. Oh, Sasha, thank you for being in the chat and thank you for suggesting me to hydrate. I'm gonna do that. Awesome. Okay, I don't even know how to ban spam on Twitch, so apologies for that. It should be easier. I don't see any button from the... Anyway, let's ignore that spam for now. Cool, so what can we do next? We could probably turn this thing into a proper button. So we can just say button here, button, and button. And now it should look a little bit better. Well, kinda. Probably we still want to have a div just to put it in a new line. We could do a little bit of styling, but I'm just keeping it simple for now. Oh yeah, look at this. That was a bug. So if you don't click restart game, let's make somebody win. You can still click here. So this is definitely a bug. So that shouldn't be possible. So how to fix that? To fix that, we need to say that in our condition where so either the current cell is not empty, which means we cannot click this cell, or let's put it here, or is complete. We call it is complete. Is complete. Then in that case you cannot click anymore. So let's see if I do let somebody win. Now I cannot click anymore. So that fixed the issue. Okay, at this point I'm pretty confident that the game is complete. I don't know if we have a lot more time because I said we had about 1 hour and we're close to the hour. So I don't know if there is any final suggestion in the chat, but if you liked what you're seeing, I think next time we could try to do maybe to use the store, or 1st of December is closed, so at that point we will have some new challenges to develop. But definitely let me know here in the chat or later on Twitter, or if you're watching this on YouTube, let me know what do you think and what you would like to see next. Or maybe if you didn't like this implementation, give me a link to your own implementation. I really love to compare what you did with something else. And just to do a quick recap before we finish the stream. So basically we were trying to implement a Tic Tac Toe game. We kept it very simple. We did everything in one component. We have a cell, and a cell is basically either player 1 or player 2, so X or O, or it can be empty if we haven't filled that cell yet. Then our grid is just a collection of 9 cells. We have some winning positions. So what we do is we define the players as constants, and in fairness, this could even be outside our component. Doesn't need to be. Can we say also as const here? I'm not too sure if that makes any big difference. But yeah, basically the 2 pieces of information that we have are the current state of the board, so a signal, and the current turn, so a number that goes from 0 up to 8, because you can fill 9 cells at best. So then we have a bunch of derived state. So we have what is the current player, and the current player is basically taking this constant, reading the current turn, and picking for every even number X and for every odd number O. Then we have other derived state, winner, that checks in the entire grid if there is a winner, is draw, that checks if the current match is a draw, is complete, that checks if either there is a winner or is a draw. Basically we cannot do any additional move. And finally we have other helper function, for instance restart game, which basically sets the game to an empty grid and the turn to 0. And here we have all our display logic. So the first part is basically displaying the grid, and the second part is displaying a message that is saying who is the current player, if we can still play, or if it is a draw, or if there is a winner, who is the winner. And finally, when the game is in this complete mode, we are going to display a button that allows us to restart the game. So that's pretty much it. One cool thing about Solid.js is that this function, as opposed to, for instance, React, in React this is kind of a render function, so every time it needs to re-render, it's calling this function. In Solid, as far as I understand, it works a little bit different. This is more considered a setup function. So it is executed once, all this function, of course, all the Tic Tac Toe component function, and then basically is used to set up all the listeners and all the interactivity between our code, the markup that we are trying to define, and the state. So this is why it's very important to use these components like for or switch or show, because if we put here just an expression with a ternary operation inside, that ternary operation is actually evaluated only once. It's not going to be re-evaluated at every re-render. So this seems to be kind of a very common issue, because people coming from React might have different expectations, but I actually like the Solid.js model more, because I think it's a little bit more clear what's going to happen, and keeping track of all the rendering rules in React sometimes is a little bit challenging. But this is just my opinion. Feel free to disagree. Okay, with that being said, I think that's all I have for today. So thank you very much for being with me. I hope that you like this new kind of stream. Again, any feedback is most welcome, so don't hesitate to reach out, even if it's if you want to criticize me or tell me that this stream sucks and I should be doing everything totally different. I totally accept that, so definitely let me know. So until next time, thank you very much, and make sure to follow on Twitch, on Twitter, and on YouTube, because these are the places where I'm going to be posting more content, and where you can keep up with new stuff. So thank you very much, everyone. Bye.